I think some people kind of forget these days that MMA is mixed martial arts. There are a collection of individual martial arts that make up this sport, whether you're looking at judo or taekwondo or aikido or power slap. All of these individual martial arts form this conglomerate that is what we consider the sport of MMA today. But obviously there are four main pillars. And those four main pillars is what we're going to focus on today. Starting off, Muay Thai. Muay Thai is something that we've been talking about a lot recently with a so-called Carlos Prates. But I think another really good representative of Muay Thai and somebody who absolutely represents the weaknesses of Muay Thai is Rafael Fiziev. Rafael Fiziev is all around a complete monster. He's deadly, he's fast, he's pretty jacked, and, he lives in Thailand where the pharmacies have everything and drug testing organizations don't get out there very frequently. And, again, he's a monster for sure. But I think that when you look at his Muay Thai, I think it's the reason, obviously, why he's won as many fights as he has. It's also the reason why he's lost every fight that he's lost. When you go back and you look at his Muay Thai fights, he fought pretty traditional. Very stationary, not a lot of movement, not a lot of head movement, not a lot of cutting angles, really big strikes back and forth. It's Muay Thai to a T. And, when he transferred into MMA, of course, a lot changed, obviously. I mean, he uses a lot more lateral movement now. He puts together combinations much more. But, again, the problem with Muay Thai in general is that because there's less movement, because there's less footwork, because you're more stationary, and because you're wearing 4-ounce gloves, it's very difficult to have the same level of defense that you would have in a pure Muay Thai context. You cannot just cover up and absorb strikes. The more stationary you get, the more susceptible you are to takedowns. The more stationary you get, the more susceptible you are to counter shots because, again, you cannot block the same way. Clearly, he has worked to change this with more movement and more combinations. Here's the problem, though. Muay Thai, when you look at how you strike in Muay Thai, every single kick, you're fully turning the hip over. You are fully committing to every single strike that you throw. And again, regardless of the work that Fiziev has made to tweak his skill set, the tendency to plant and throw has gotten him in trouble. I mean, you look at his fight with Renato Moicano. Now, he fucking knocked the fuck out of Renato Moicano, obviously. But when he got tagged, it came from the fact that, again, he's moving laterally a lot. He's really putting together combinations. But no matter what, his muscle memory is tuned to strike like a Thai fighter, and that means he is going to plant and get stationary and throw hard and fully turn over everything, and this will always leave him susceptible to strikes. But I think his fight with Justin Gaethje is absolutely the best example we can look at. I want you to gauge this parallel here. Look at how Justin Gaethje right here enters into range. Fiziev looks to land a shot. Gaethje rolls under and then angles out. Look at how he exits out of the pocket very intelligently. Parallel that to almost, every single sequence we're looking at here. Fiziev, again, despite trying to move more, he cannot get around the fact that his game is to eventually plant and throw, and he gets tagged here. As he tries to exit out of range here, he just covers up and backs up and eats a bunch of shots here. I mean, when he got dropped, why? He's standing completely still right in front of Justin Gaethje, who is just using movement so much more intelligently because, he doesn't come from a pure Muay Thai background. And of course, looping back to Carlos Prates, like we looked at a lot recently, he's just the kind of guy that, he wouldn't get tagged the same way Fiziev would because he has so much more height, so much more reach. But, when you were pushing him back, when you were moving forward with strikes, he's not slipping on the outside, countering you, catching you coming in, cutting angles himself. No, he would just cover up and back up because that is sort of a more, standard Muay Thai approach. approach. But you look at his last fight against Geoff Neal, man, he completely changed everything. You look at the head movement, you look at the counter shots, you look at how he's angling on the back foot. I mean, it's a night and day difference, and I think he is someone who has sort of noticed the deficiencies in his traditional style, and he's making the correct adjustments. Because I think, when you look at Muay Thai as a whole, the clinch work, the knees, the power that comes with that style, it's all phenomenal, and it can be used very well. But I feel like, especially in MMA, you need to mix more boxing into it. You need to mix more movement and more angles. And I think if you can do that, it becomes very, very good. But obviously, this sort of traditional style, I just don't think is super effective in MMA these days. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, DraftKings Sportsbook. Guys, this weekend we have a massive fight between Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford, and DraftKings is giving you guys, I am blown away by this offer. I'm going to be honest with you, but if you're a brand new customer and you bet just $5 on anything, they will give you $200 in bonus bets. I am not joking. Listen, guys, if you love the thrill of sports betting, and again, you're willing to put your fight IQ on the line, it's an absolute no-brainer. Even if sports betting is not yet legal in your state, there's no problem at all. DraftKings is your one-stop shop for all things daily fantasy, where you can catch in on all the fun and have a shot to win cash prizes. Again, brand new customers, use my promo code MMAche, bet $5 on any wager, and get $200 in bonus bets. That is code MMAche only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Next, of course, we have the sport of wrestling. A lot of people for a very long time would tell you that wrestling is the best base for MMA. Look, in terms of where we stand with that right now, look, I think it still obviously can be a very good base, obviously. But I think, to me, the main problem with the sport of wrestling that is different from literally any other martial art is that you cannot score in MMA with wrestling. Wrestling is a pathway to potentially score in MMA, but you cannot say that about any other martial art. If all you have is Muay Thai, that's it. Like, the only thing you've ever done your entire life is Muay Thai, and you go into an MMA fight, you have the capacity to land strikes, to potentially knock out your opponent. Like, you can theoretically still score. If all you have is Jiu Jitsu, well, by attacking submission threats, you are, per the judging criteria, scoring in MMA. But wrestling, literally everything wrestling teaches you, per the judging criteria, doesn't actually do anything in MMA, which, again, you can't say that about any other martial art. Even judo has some submissions, but, again, it's not the same with wrestling, and I think this actually does sort of highlight itself through a few fights. Look at Henry Cejudo versus Merab Dvalishvili. Henry Cejudo is an Olympic gold medalist wrestler. Merab Dvalishvili is definitely a wrestler of sorts. He is not an Olympic gold medalist, to say the least, and Henry showed him levels when it came to just straight-up wrestling. Look at this sequence right here. He feints the single leg, gets Merab to sprawl, circles to the back, hits the trip to take him down. This is beautiful wrestling, and that sequence literally means nothing in MMA. Like, that sequence doesn't mean anything. He literally was unable to score in the slightest with that sequence. Again, Daniel Cormier, I understand you might think he knows what he's talking about because he's a UFC commentator and you're supposed to know what you're talking about. I promise you, though, he's very biased and he's never read the judging criteria. He doesn't know what it means. But again, right, it's you understand where I'm coming from with this. Bo Nickel versus Rainer De Ritter. Bo Nickel got in on a great takedown against Rainer De Ritter. Got him up against the fence, picked up the single leg, hit the knee tap, took him down. But again, that's not actually scoring in MMA. And of course, the second they hit the ground, Rainer de Ritter showed him levels, started attacking submissions, forcing Bo to pull out. He baited Bo to going for his own submission so he can sweep him, end up on top, and pass his guard. You know, again, Bo Nickel is unable to score against Rainer de Ritter with the one thing that he specializes in. I think the best way to put it is, you hear some people say that the MMA scoring criteria is damage-based scoring, but that is ignorance, because at the end of the day, it's not. It is finish-based scoring, I think, is the best way to put it. The criteria favors actions that can potentially finish the fight over all else. And again, that is not what wrestling teaches you how to do. Wrestling teaches you how to take somebody down and control them, and it teaches you how to defend takedowns and to not be controlled, which definitely has its utility. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is a pillar of MMA for a reason, but, you know, I think that overall, it is a very linear aspect of MMA these days, wrestling out in the open. You know, like, to bring up Henry Cejudo again, when he fought Aljamain Sterling, that Division III wrestler, which, you know, Division III Olympic gold medalist, that is such a monumental gap in skill that just didn't matter in MMA. When they were out in the open, sure, Henry, you know, was the way better wrestler. And then, of course, the second somebody's back hit a fence, you're doing a completely different sport now, and, you know, that fight ended up going how it ended up going, and Aljamain Sterling won. I mean, you know, as crazy as it might sound, I think, honestly, maybe the best way to make wrestling work in MMA is to not be that pure of a wrestler. I mean, look, let's look at Hamzat and Bo Nickel. Hamzat is just an all-around way better grappler. Way better grappler. I mean, look, fucking George St. Pierre never wrestled, but the way he got in on takedowns had nothing to do with wrestling. His takedowns were all reactive takedowns. He was so good at ducking underneath your strikes to get deep on shots. That is not a skill you learn in wrestling. So, you know, again, the utility of taking someone down, defending takedowns, of course, that's always going to be very valuable. But specializing in wrestling your entire life up until you're 26 years old like Bo Nickel, you know, I just think that's diminishing returns, because pure wrestling just is way too linear of an aspect of MMA. I think Jiu Jitsu has a very similar issue. I think you look at someone like Gordon Ryan, right, who is the absolute, undisputed, greatest Jiu Jitsuist of all time. His style would be awful for MMA. His style would be horrendous for MMA. You need a very particular style of jiu-jitsu to make it work in MMA, and we've seen it time and time again. You know, you got these lifelong jiu-jitsu guys who come into the UFC, come into MMA, and they're just not good at it. And I think that that's almost something you can't even really say for a sport like wrestling. Take the absolute best wrestler in the world, you know, again, they're going to have their own problems, like we just discussed. But, you know, if they get a hold of you, it's going to be a problem you got to worry about. If you try to take them down, regardless of how well you set up the shot, their scrambling ability, their defense, it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to work. I do not believe in the slightest that Gordon Ryan's style of jiu-jitsu would work at all in MMA, and that is a problem that I've pretty much outlined perfectly like 2 months ago. So in order to make a jiu-jitsu background effective in MMA, you've got to be able to scramble. You have to. But when you do look at the top of the sport of jiu-jitsu, a lot of those guys don't really have that ability. For those who remember, there was a time where Gordon Ryan was looking to transfer to MMA. He himself said that he was sparring, he was preparing, he was going to do it, but John Danaher sat him down and told him not to do it. And apparently, John Danaher told him,
"So John doesn't want me to compete in MMA because he feels like jiu-jitsu is just about to break into that next level of professional sports."
You know, I hate to break this one to Gordon. I think Danaher was just very well aware that Gordon did not have what it takes to transfer into MMA. And again, I think this is for a variety of reasons, but I think when you look at most rule sets of jiu-jitsu, like you look at ADCC, WNO, they do 15 to 20 minute rounds straight, no breaks in between. Now, the reason why Gordon Ryan is so good, a lot of people will say it's because of steroids. It's not. The reason why he's so good is because he is way more technical than everybody else. But he's not very fast twitch. He's not very explosive. His game is reliant on breaking his opponent down systematically. Here's the problem. That doesn't work when you only have 5 minutes to work in between each round, and your opponent's only goal is to stay the fuck away from you and just try not to engage on the ground at all. I mean, for someone like Gordon, good luck going out there, pulling guard, grabbing your opponent's wrist, moving it this way, grabbing the underhook, getting the shoulder crunch, switching the hips, diving under for a leg lock. I mean, good luck systematically setting all of this up when your opponent, again, is just going to try to stand up and stay away from you. So, I mean, some may say, well, you just got to know how to wrestle. I mean, obviously you do need to know how to wrestle, but I don't even think that's enough these days. I think that when you look at someone like Buchecha, who just fought in the UFC, he does know how to wrestle. I mean, Buchecha is not a bad wrestler, but here's the problem. It's not about knowing how to wrestle. It's about setting up your wrestling in MMA. Buchecha was shooting a lot, but it was so hard for him to ever actually beat his opponent to the hips. His opponent was all over all of these shots because he just couldn't set it up well. At one point, he really committed to a hard power double leg and was able to take his opponent down. But then again, the problem there was Buchecha just doesn't really have great scrambling ability. I mean, you need to be able to jump on submissions. You need to be able to dive on them. That is something that Brian Ortega is so special with. But someone like Buchecha, again, he didn't really have that ability at all. I mean, he was able to get to the back here. He landed some good shots, but he couldn't jump on any submissions, and neither could somebody like Gordon Ryan. So, despite the success Buchecha did have in this moment, eventually the round ended, they reset, he couldn't get in on any more takedowns. He didn't have the energy to commit to that hard double leg again. And, look, like we talked about before, there are new rule sets coming, like CJI, UFC, BJJ, that sort of promote a more faster-paced scrambling approach, which I think will help. But imagine being able to dominate jiu-jitsu, completely dominate the entire sport with a style that is almost completely unapplicable to MMA. That is not the same with any other martial art. Again, right, like we talked about earlier with Muay Thai. There are a lot of weaknesses with a pure Muay Thai style, obviously. But man, Gordon Ryan's style, I truly believe, just is literally almost completely unapplicable. And again, that's a problem. Now, the final pillar of MMA is boxing. And like I've also discussed a lot recently, I think right now the meta has shifted, and a boxing-heavy approach is what is dominating right now. And of course, so there's always an ebb and flow with these things. It will change and evolve and grow or possibly regress maybe. I mean, it always has. But I think the one issue with boxing, a boxing-heavy approach in MMA that is different from any other martial art, is that you can essentially design a perfect hypothetical game plan that will completely neuter a boxing-heavy approach. You can design a game plan that just completely stays away from somebody whose only goal is to use their boxing against you. I guess technically you can do this with any style, but I really think this approach is actually very doable, all right? I think that here's what you're going to do if you're fighting somebody who wants to box with you, who wants to get in the pocket and use their elite boxing. You are going to stay on the outside, and you are going to be using a lot of footwork and a lot of kicks. You are going to be spamming calf kicks. A boxing-heavy approach, of course, leaves you very vulnerable for calf kicks. There's a lot of weight on your lead leg. It's slightly turned inward. Obviously, Conor McGregor, using a very boxing-heavy approach, got his calf eaten alive. Ilia Topuria has never defended a low outside calf kick well. He's absorbed quite a few of them, of course, though. He knocked everybody out so quickly, no one's really been able to make it add up against him. But you're also looking for teeps. You're looking to slam kicks into your opponent's arms. If they're very boxing heavy, this is going to add up as the fight goes on. And every single time they commit to punches, every single time they realize, okay, this guy is landing on me, he's hurting me, I need to get on the inside, you are going to fully close the distance. You are going to stuff the boxing. Something that, frankly, Leon Edwards actually did phenomenally against Kamaru Usman, and he did it very well against Belal Muhammad a few times. But of course, Leon had some of his own issues. For one, he completely lacked the footwork and movement aspect of this approach. He actually got very stationary and shelled up when things got bad with the boxing. So he did not fit this criteria perfectly well, but the blueprint is there. I think, again, to me, Volkanovski is somebody that could use this game plan so well. I mean, he showed his ability to do this so well against Ilia Topuria, was doing a really good job on the outside, landing his kicks beautifully, closing the distance beautifully when he needed to. But then, of course, he also showed sequences of doing the opposite of this and then staying in the pocket and awkwardly being right where the danger is instead of trying to clinch and trying to hug, instead of trying to close the distance. And I think someone else who theoretically can do this approach perfectly would be like an Islam Makhachev. I mean, you look at when he fought Volkanovski the very first time. At the time, Volkanovski was seen as being the way better striker, but you see how Islam was just always moving. He was never stationary. He tried to almost never be in the pocket, and Volk was having a miserable time landing on him. And then he was also able to, at times, fully close the distance into the clinch and actually land from there very well. I think that he himself could do this really perfectly. I think that is the main problem with such a boxing-focused approach, is that you have one range you need the fight to be in order to have success. It's not the same with Muay Thai or even kickboxing, right? If you come from a Muay Thai background, you're very comfortable in the clinch. You're very comfortable on the outside. You're able to fight in the pocket. Of course, probably not with a really high-level boxer, but, again, you've got all the bases covered. And I really think it's a matter of time before somebody is able to execute a game plan like this against, an Ilia Topuria type. I even think, Charles Oliveira showed the potential for, certain areas to take the fight where you're going to have an advantage. He looked ridiculously strong in the clinch, doesn't quite have the footwork on the outside, did, kind of extend in with a right hand unprompted. You don't have to remind me, all right? I know. I have not forgotten what's happened. But somebody with elite distance management and a very well-rounded game is exactly what I'm talking about here. A Max Holloway that had the ability and the opportunity to fully close the distance with Ilia and stuff the boxing and be strong in the clinch. Oh, that would have been very interesting. I mean, he had a ton of success on the outside, but of course, that was the only place he was able to keep the fight. Again, I think that eventually someone can and will exploit this. We just haven't had somebody yet capable of it. But again, to sum it all up one more time, to me, the boxing heavy approach is the one style that you can really theoretically make such a solid game plan to completely avoid their one area they need to be in order to have success. And it's just a matter of time before somebody exploits it.